We appreciate all of the guests who have appeared on our show and sincerely thank them for providing you, our audience, with useful information. However, the advice our guests provide is theirs, and we encourage you to seek out a professional if you have specific questions about any topic we cover on the Crushing Debt Podcast. On this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast, crushing adulting is easy.
Welcome to the Crushing Debt Podcast with your host, Florida attorney Shawn Yesner, where our goal is to help you get rid of the financial bullies in your life.
So welcome back to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast. My name is Shawn Yesner, owner and founder of Yesner Law, and welcome back your financial coach, George Corbello. Welcome, George.
What is up, my friend? How you doing?
Good. Full belly from Thanksgiving?
Oh, I can't walk. I think I've got gout for 6 years now because of it, but yes.
So we have a very special guest for you on this week's show. Before I get to her real quick, we do got to pay the bills, and so I want to talk about one of our two sponsors, Sam Cohen. He owns Attorneys First Insurance. So if you are an attorney or if you own a title company and you need malpractice insurance, contact our friend Sam Cohen at Attorneys First. Even if you may have had a claim in the past, he can still look at different various options to get you covered. You can contact Sam at attorneysfirst.com or just go to his website, which is attorneysfirst.com. He loves meeting attorneys and title companies. And so one way to support us is to support Sam. And the best way to do that is to introduce him to an attorney or title company or startup attorney or startup title company that you might know. However, our guest this week is somebody that George and I both had the honor of being on her podcast, although interestingly enough, we were not on at the same time. So now George and I get to probably have the fun that we didn't have because we weren't on her show at the same time. Our guest is a Tampa Bay-based real estate investor. She and her husband have reached financial independence in their 30s through their 9 short-term and 3 long-term rentals on the west coast of Florida. She shares her story and helps educate others through her Adulting is Easy podcast, plus social media and coaching. Please welcome our guest, Lauren Keene-Amond. Welcome, Lauren.
Hi, Shawn. It's nice to see you guys both at the same time. Like you said, I've talked to both of you kind of virtually, so it's nice to see you both.
George can speak for himself, but I had a great time on the Adulting is Easy podcast.
Oh, really? I did. Yeah, and of course I didn't. So yeah, is that what's implied?
I didn't say you didn't. I said you could speak up if you want. I will, however, note that I was episode 133 and George was episode 145, so I was first.
You are better. We get it. All right, move on.
But no, if you want to hear those interviews with Lauren, check out the Adulting is Easy podcast. Again, I was episode 133. I think George's was more recent.
Yeah.
And you can find Lauren. She's on Twitter under Adulting is Easy. She's got a whole bunch of downloads that you can go to by going to adultingiseasy.gumroad, G-U-M road, R-O-A-D.com. You can contact her about coaching at realadultingiseasy.com/book-online. And again, we'll have all of that, plus we'll have all your social media stuff in the notes. So if anyone wants to connect with you or listen to the podcast, we'll put the Spotify link, the Apple link, the YouTube link, the website link. We'll get all that in the notes.
She is
awesome.
Very important, people.
Yeah, we will absolutely promote Lauren because thank you for having us on your show.
Exactly.
So talk to us about, for those of you that really this is their first exposure, tell us basically what the Adulting is Easy podcast is all about.
So Adulting is Easy started with me telling my sister about personal finance. So my sister and I are 13 years apart, and it started, I was thinking about this the other day. I remember one time we were in the car and I was just talking to her about different personal finance things. I was like, are you getting any of this? And she's like, I'm getting about 50%, but keep talking because it's really important. And a couple of years after that, I started the Adulting is Easy podcast, which actually was a blog to start. And I just kind of started reading my blogs to her. And so the first 24 episodes or so are me teaching her. And then she got busy with SATs and college prep. And I started interviewing experts from there. So since then, I've been interviewing experts on different topics. A lot are from quote unquote money Twitter, because those are my friends. That's where I mostly hang out online. And about half the episodes are real estate based. The other half are personal finance based.
Well, that explains how I got on the show.
Well, I think that's the reason why I got on there too. Hello.
Okay.
Let me ask it in regards to the real estate part, because that seems to be the hot thing, right? Everybody, how do I make money? What's passive income? All of these kind of things. And I imagine you've covered them in multitude of ways within your show as well. But what are some of the things that people are looking at when it comes to having a rental, an Airbnb, or any of those kind of things? What are some of the things that they should be looking for as part of that process?
So real estate, something that people should, for the most part, know and understand is that it's not as passive income gets. Mm-hmm. Right. If you're going to invest in index funds, which my husband and I have as well, we have, our 401k, Roth IRA, we have a brokerage account as well. We believe in that. However, you can't use leverage really. Well, you can, but I don't do the margin account thing. That's not for me. So everything that's in our brokerage account is money we put there plus the returns. Whereas with our real estate, we can put a smaller amount down, get a mortgage, and then really leverage our returns positively. We've, of course, been very lucky the last few years in the Tampa Bay area and Florida in general, that there's been a lot of appreciation. And so the reason that we like real estate so much is, you can own, say, a $400,000 asset by putting $100,000 down. And if it appreciates by $100,000, that's only 25% of the 400, but that's 100% of your 100. So that makes your return just for appreciation 100%. You're also going to get cash flow, which is why we do short-term rentals for the most part versus long-term rentals. The cash flow is significantly better. You're going to get loan pay down. So we have $1 million in mortgages. This is going to freak crushing debt people out probably, but we have $1 million in mortgages, right? So every month, think about there's thousands of dollars being paid down on our loans, which goes straight to our net worth. There's also tax benefits and things like that. So we're showing a profit right now for our short-term rentals for the year, but we're about to pay our taxes and insurance for our apartment building. And we're also going to eventually, add our depreciation and things like that in there. So you can generate a lot of cash, which we're putting back into the business and putting back into the properties, but not generate a profit. So there's a bunch of different ways to make money in real estate, which people need to know. I don't call it passive. A lot of people, it's more like self-created income than it is passive.
Well, and I think the IRS is really who calls it passive.
Right.
But, we love the IRS, but since when have they ever been realistic about a lot of things? So do you manage your own rentals or do you have a management company? How do you do that?
We manage them ourselves. So I have a lot of automations involved in my short-term rentals. My long-term rentals, not as much. Like my tenants send me checks and I deposit them and they call me when something's wrong and things like that. But in terms of our short-term rentals, tons of automation there. A booking comes in, my cleaners are notified. I don't have to talk to them. The guests get their renter's agreement and security deposit automatically. They're going to get all of their communications automatically. The locks are going to set themselves. All of the above, right? So, it's somewhat time consuming. I think I spend about 20 to 30 minutes a day on it on average. My husband does most of the maintenance. When we do set up a new short-term rental, of course, that takes some time. So we are managing everything ourselves. And that's in addition to, obviously, the Adulting is Easy podcast and everything that goes along with that. And also our 2 full-time jobs.
Busy. That's a full plate in regards to that itself. But I look at the bio itself, too. You're talking about financial independence. Explain to, the listeners itself what that means, but I'm more curious in regards to how does that feel, and I think because that's seems to be the one thing that when we talk about that term, there's a certain type of feeling that ties to it. So let me give you that floor for that.
So it feels a lot like graduating college and the first time I made 6 figures. It's a little anticlimactic. You kind of build it up in your head over years of what that's going to feel like. You're like, oh, I'm here. Today feels a lot like yesterday did. Right. So that said, we're financially independent on paper. Going through this recession, though, we are, which I'm calling it a recession. We are, we're working through that. We're building up some cash reserves. My husband's putting $1,000 a week into the stock market. So, we're kind of shoring everything up right now. Let me think. Anything else for financial independence?
Well, I think the challenge is, while you're thinking of that, the challenge too is you have some people that say, well, wait a minute, you got $1 million in debt. How can you be financially independent with any debt, much less $1 million in debt?
Right. So your net worth there's two sides to that balance sheet. That's why it's called a balance sheet, right? Your assets are, you're either going to own them outright, right? That's your equity, or you're going to have a loan on it. That's your liability. So that's why it's called a balance sheet. That's the balance. It's an equation. So as long as the one side of your balance sheet really is going to outweigh the other, and what I mean by that is if your equity, if you have a positive net worth, if your assets are worth, say, what are our assets worth? Say $2.5 million. And then we have $1 million in debt. That means our net worth is $1.5 million. Right. That's positive. It's a good thing. And truly, I would not, I became a millionaire just before I turned 32. My husband was 28. And we would not have done that had we not leveraged our real estate properties, right? The equity from my first house, I sold that after I'd owned it for 7 years, bought a duplex with it. That duplex was not leveraged, but we still made $100,000 on that in equity in 2 years. And now that equity has been taken and is in a 6-unit apartment building that is leveraged, right? So had I saved up all the money that I could to maybe pay cash for my first house or not invest separately or anything like that, I would not have been able to trade up into those other properties. And I remember, George, what I was going to say in answer to your question about the financial independence. The big thing that drove us there is something that we call in the real estate world house hacking. And that's where you buy a property with other units on it, basically. You can technically house hack if you own a house and you have a bedroom that you rent out. But in our case, we bought a 119 at the time, year old functioning commercial bed and breakfast. And we decided to renovate and move into the main house and then rent out 2 cottages that were on the property, along with, we traded out a mobile home for a camper. So that right there got rid of our mortgage payment. Wow. 2 more properties later, we've now gotten rid of all of our other bills. And that's basically financial independence. That's what it is. Right. It's when your assets, when your money, if you will, makes enough money to pay your bills. Now we're not living large, right? There's people in my backyard right now. I drive a Honda Accord. My husband has a 4Runner, which just hit 100,000 miles, right? So, but we don't really worry about money. We don't think twice about going out to eat. We can go on the vacations that we want to and things like that. I'm still dealing with PTO though, because I do still have my job, but so we could easily, let's say we made a decision to buy a house on the water. That would take us out of financial independence, right? Though all of a sudden our real estate would not 100% pay our bills. Right. So that's something that, that's maybe also too why there's this feeling of, financial independence is great, but it's not you're set for life automatically, no matter what decisions you make.
And I think the comment there that I love for you, it's not like you get to a state and then the finish line and then you're done. It's a state of mind. It's a mindset that you put into place and you're practicing each day. And I think a lot of people, we struggle with that, where it's like, well, I'll just, if I do one thing, it'll net this result and then I'm done. And that happens with exercise. To, all of us, that happens with a lot of things. We want the quick solution, right? And it's like, well, I'll just buy the house and I'm going to, it'll make money and we're good. But there's work that needs to be done. There's certain things that you need to have in place. And I think a lot of people, we want the easy way. And I think you even, you're saying it's not easy each day, but it does give you the flexibility. And I think that's what I love about that financial independence mindset is it gives you the flexibility to do more, to be able to make decisions. You're not strapped to, I can't do anything this week because I'm waiting for the next paycheck or something of that nature. That's a hard one, though, for a lot of people to really understand. And of course, we've got 2 great podcasts here to be able to, help answer those questions and help build that mindset. So shameless plug.
One of the questions I had was, you also have, not only do you have the short-term rentals, but you also have the long-term rentals. So how do you decide what we're going to hold on to as a short-term versus what we're going to hold on to as a long-term? How do you make that distinction?
Yes. So our long-term tenants are inherited. What our investment portfolio, our real estate portfolio consists of right now is that bed and breakfast that I talked about, which is where I'm sitting right now. We did a cash out refi of this, got our rate down to 2.99%. Took out $100,000 after we had put $150 into the renovation and bought a duplex in Hudson, Florida, which is about 30 minutes north of where I am in Pinellas. That had a long-term tenant in it, and we made the other side a short-term rental. We also rent out our house. So when this house books, we go and stay there. In that case, that particular unit doesn't perform super great compared to our others. It kind of just treads water. We like it because it's on the water. We go, we take our boat. Somebody can stay here at our house, which was a bed and breakfast anyways, and people can enjoy this while we're gone. So I said that to say, when that tenant next door in that duplex leaves, we will probably continue that as a long-term rental because the short-term rental doesn't seem to be particularly profitable. That 6-unit apartment building that I mentioned earlier, where the equity from my very first home that I bought when I was 22, we made it half short-term rental, half long-term rental at first. So we did ask 3 long-term tenants to leave because that is our business model. That's what we want to do. And it's in a vacation central. And then just last week, we set up a 4th one as a short-term rental because that long-term tenant, we raised rents a reasonable amount, trying to get to market rent. And one of them chose to leave. So we flipped that to short-term rental. And that is the plan with the other 2. When those older retired folks that are still in that building and those other 2 units, when they leave, we will flip those to short-term as well. So it's really just sort of a process of people we've inherited. Our business model is short-term. I like that much more. I'm significantly better at being a host than I am being a landlord. So that's the plan. We'll probably just keep the one long-term in the duplex just because the other side it hasn't gone gangbusters.
And that's part of your coaching as well in terms of coaching people that want to invest in real estate, invest in short-term rental real estate. That's what your coaching is all about, right?
A lot of my coaching is that. I do some financial coaching as well, but I'm not out here trying to compete with George. I do that for kind of friends and family here and there. Mostly when people come to me, they come to me for short-term rentals. So I have one coaching client right now where we get on the phone every couple of weeks and we analyze a few deals together. Deals are a little bit hard to find right now. There's not as much supply as there really should be. And obviously interest rates are pretty high. And also the short-term rental market's getting a little saturated, but we're looking at deals and I believe we'll find him one. I have another client who has already set up a short-term rental. And what we are doing is we're going through all of those automations that I told you about, setting up the owner reservation system, the price labs, the remote lock, the QuickBooks, all of those things. And then I have another client who she had negotiated with her current landlord to rent another unit in her building and then Airbnb that. So she already had the unit. So we worked on what should the layout be? How should we decorate it? And also helped her with the listing and things like that.
So you had mentioned in your last comment itself about the saturation of the market with one of your clients. That is obviously getting in the news now in regards to the new bubble, the new bubble that's coming itself. So obviously for me, my question for you is kind of like, what are you doing to protect yourself, obviously, in your situation in regards to these news? Again, what's your comment too, I guess? What's your comment on this particular item, right? But at the same time, like, again, what are you coaching? What are you telling folks who are getting new into this about when you're reading this in the news or having these things? What are some of the things that you're kind of telling them?
So I think we got to this point for a couple of different reasons. One was the prices of houses were so high and kind of skyrocketing, especially, for example, here in Florida, that people almost had to short-term rent to get any cash flow whatsoever. Right. We were at the point where if you were running any numbers, you were at best breaking even with the long-term rents. And you could only raise rent so much. I think we're seeing that now. So I think some people got into the short-term rental game because they wanted to be investors and that was the only way they could make the numbers work. On the unfortunate side of things, I think they may have ran their numbers very aggressively. And there's a very different situation between, buying a big, beautiful house on the water where it's one unit, but maybe it's $1,000 a night or something like that. And what we've done, which is basically density, right? I have one mortgage payment. My mortgage payment here is $1,950, including taxes and insurance. But I have 4 units here, right? I have my camper, I have the 2 cottages, and I have this house when I want to leave it.
Right.
So that helps a lot with terms of being, kind of budget friendly and things like that. And we've done the same thing with our 6-unit apartment building. We can be very competitive in comparison to some of those short-term rentals that people bought for $500,000 or $600,000. I bought that whole building for $585,000, right? Some people bought one house to Airbnb for that. So, right. I think we'll be okay because of that. We've taken the time we're not doing more deals. We're trying to get more revenue out of our existing properties. So we redid the dock at our duplex that's on the water. Here, we put in mini split systems in our cottages so they didn't have wall units anymore. We also used to lock the entire upstairs here when we leave. Now we're only going to lock one bedroom. So this room will be available to people when they're here. So it went from a 1 bedroom to a 2 bedroom. And then in the apartment building, obviously, we when we had the opportunity, switched to another short-term rental. So, we're trying to get more revenue out of our existing properties. I'm continuing to work. I had a goal originally of leaving my 9 to 5 at 33 years old, which I am, and maybe I still will do. But I'd like to work through this next recession, make my 6 figures, stack that cash. Right now, my entire paycheck, it doesn't go to bills in any way. It completely just goes to cash right now. So, and then my husband is going half cash and then half into the stock market at $1,000 a week, because again, the real estate pays our bills as is. So our paychecks, we don't have anything to do with them. So that's what we're doing right now to kind of shore things up.
Well, and I think one interesting thing that you said, there's a lot of people that say, if you're going to invest, it's got to be real estate. And then there's the other group that says, no, if you're going to invest, it's got to be stocks. And I think you're doing it right. You're like, hey, both of them have
diversify.
Yeah, both of them have advantages. Both of them have disadvantages. When one's up, one's down. When one's right, one's left. And so, yeah, let's do them both.
There is that aspect to it. Definitely. There's tax benefits, especially when we're talking about the retirement, whether it's the deferred taxes of the 401k or the you're never taxed again option that we have with the Roth IRA.
Right.
The downside, of course, is they're kind of locked up till we're 59 and a half, and we will not work that long. So that's what we're doing right now, is beefing up the brokerage account to take us. My husband thinks he'll work till about 40. He's 30 now. So to take us from when he's 40 to when I am 59 and a half, which 3 years older. So you can do that math. But the other thing too, is my husband is an engineer and he's part owner of his engineering firm. So he owns 20% of his engineering firm. So we're thinking that exit would be about when he's 40. And at that point, I'm trying to convince him to wait this long. At that point, maybe we'll do the house on the water or something like that. I would like to stay financially independent until then.
Smart move itself. Let me ask you, and I think we, going back to the, let's go in the time machine itself, saving for that first purchase. Like, what were some of the things you were doing for that? Because obviously a lot of listeners are going to be, I want to do this. And it's like, okay, well, again, what's doing it right? What would be the right thing? So what did you do for that initial saving for that initial purchase?
I cheated on that. I was in college. I went to University of Florida, Shawn. We've talked about this, and how dare you wear that shirt when you're recording with me. He got a Florida State shirt on, if you guys can't see that. So
we're recording before the game, so I won't make any comments.
True that. It might be good this year. So I digress. So I went to the University of Florida. I developed really bad headaches one semester out of nowhere when I was 20, and I dropped out completely. And when I came back, after one semester, what they figured out worked was a blood pressure medication, of all things, blood pressure medication and aspirin. I didn't even have high blood pressure, but that helped my headaches, knocked them right out. Right. So when I came back the following semester, I was considered disabled. And so I didn't have to go full time anymore, and I could still get my full scholarship. So then I went and got a job, and I worked for the utility company in Gainesville. And so 2 days a week I did school, 2 days a week I did work. And then I had Fridays where I could do school if I needed to do school, or go into work if I wanted to do that. So that's how I saved. The deal with my dad was he took half my paycheck to contribute to my bills. And then I kept the other half of that. So my dad, my parents, I should say, my mom's been a stay-at-home mom since I was born, but my parents, I had bright futures, and then they agreed to pay my living expenses, which were about $10,000 to $12,000 a year at the time for school. So they were paying those. So they took half my paycheck. The other half basically went into a savings account, other things too, right? Like I didn't put like beer on the credit card my dad could see or anything like that. I paid some of my own stuff, but I saved that money when I graduated college. It was 2012. So terrible recession times. I had a 3.94 GPA. My degree is in finance, and the best job I could find in St. Pete was a manager at Toys R Us. No joke. So I graduated.
Ever. I missed that place.
What?
I think it's coming back.
I missed that place.
I think it's coming back.
They've been taunting me with that, but I used to love that store. Anyway, sorry, digress there. So go ahead, continue.
No. They have like a Toys R Us section, I guess, in Macy's now. And that was super. My sister was all about it. Like, she was obviously a kid then. She's real bummed when I left that. But So I made $28,000 that first year out of school. But I went home and I had somewhere between $12,000 and $13,000 saved from working in college, and also babysitting, obviously built-in babysitting job with my sister, huge discount, but I didn't give the discount to her friend's parents. So I had just kind of naturally saved money over time. And I was looking to move out of my parents' house, and the rent to split an apartment with my friend was going to be like $800. And I can't remember if that included utilities or not. And my mom was like, well, why don't you think about buying a house? And I was like, what are you smoking? Who is going to give a 22-year-old manager at Toys R Us with like no job history a house? And she had bought her first house at right around 22 and her second house at 24. So this wasn't like a crazy idea to her that this young girl would have a house. And I got approved. I had 3 lines of credit. I had the credit card my dad handed me when I was 18. I had a Sears credit card that I applied for to save $15 when I bought a sweater one time. And then I had some other credit lines. So I had 3 credit lines. So I had okay credit. They used my school as my job history, and they approved me for a $125,000 house. Wow. And so I went under contract when I was 22, had my birthday, closed when I was 23. And I moved my guy friend in, who I had been a roommate with in college. And so my mortgage payment was $725 and he was paying me $550.
Wow, that's really good.
Wow. So your portion was in the 700s, or was your portion like 200?
My portion was like 200 plus utilities.
Wow, that's good.
So you've been house hacking from the very beginning.
Yeah, back way before I was probably, I don't know. I think Brandon Turner from Bigger Pockets coined that. I don't even know if he would have coined it by then, but yeah, house hacked from the beginning. And like I said, it was a little bit of cheating because I was able to save while my parents were, while I was in college, while my parents were helping me out there.
Discipline, right? That's the thing. Yeah. Like you did the hard work, the necessary. Because I'd imagine, other 22-year-olds would be like, oh wow, I made 28,000 itself, and I still owe 35 and stuff. So.
I made 28,000, but I spent 35,000.
Yeah, that was my Mustang money. Actually, I was going to buy a Mustang, and I still haven't. So, I mean, one of these days, maybe I'll buy one. But that was supposed to be the Mustang money. So then I went to, after I bought the house, which I put 10% down. You don't have to do that.
Yeah.
You can do, a first-time home buyer can get a conventional loan for 3% right now. I know because my brother just did that. Even if you're not first time, you can do 5% down on a single family home. So, and nowadays you can probably get sellers to help with the closing costs. I mean, you can probably get into a house for like $10,000.
Different ways, yeah.
Do you remember what year it was that you bought that first house?
Yeah, October 4th, 2012.
Okay, so that was right as the market was had kind of bottomed out and was starting to recover. I bought my second house in 2011. So
yeah,
right
that was like right when it bottomed. And that interest rate was 3.375. I remember they told me you'll never get an interest rate that good again. And in January 21, I got a 2.99. So that was not true.
Exactly.
That covered like the saving portion and how I got into that first house. What really obviously made me a real estate investor, I mean, I guess I had a tenant then, but what really made me a real estate investor was I kept saving money, and I got into sales. I really, really increased my salary when I was around 24. I got into sales. 24, 25 is when I made 6 figures for the first time. I say that not to brag, not to boast. I'm just saying increasing your salary helps a lot if you want to reach financial independence early. But what I was going to say is I started saving money. I mean, I started maxing out my Roth IRA, at least maxing the match in my 401k. Right. And there was some more money sort of quote unquote left over after that. Obviously, I was living super cheap and still the roommate. So I just started saving this money. And then when I met my husband, he moved in from his dad's house to my house. And that was like a little bit too far of a drive for him. I was in St. Pete. He was working in Tampa. Actually, he was working in Plant City at the time. Really long drive. So I started looking for another house, but what really changed things for me was I did not sell my first house when I bought the second one.
Right.
I rented the first one out and kept the second one. And that is what really changed things for me. That's when I got into Bigger Pockets. That's when I read the books. That's when I started listening to Bigger Pockets podcast. That's when I started, I calculated my net worth and it was like $100,000 or something, or 150. And I thought, wow, what could I do if I actually tried? And so the rest kind of is history from there. But that's the best thing you can do, just to summarize, is put 3 or 5% down on a single family home, get a roommate, or put 5% down or 10% down, whatever's required on a duplex or a triplex or a quad, and rent the rest of that out. Do that. Then if you really want to go ham with it, do it again and again and again, but at least do it one time. At least do that one time and then keep it when you move into your next. And that will set you up really, really well.
Nice.
Well, I think the other thing you said, when I made six figures for the first time, you didn't increase your budget. You didn't increase your expenses because you were making six figures. You still stayed at that affordable. You may have gone out and treated yourself here or there, but you didn't increase your expenses consistent with the increase in your salary.
Exactly.
Not until I bought the second house. When, I was saving when I was in that first house. When I bought the second house, I did upgrade a bit. I bought a BMW. I miss that car. But so I did kind of do that. And I've been pretty open about that before. We bought in a golf course community, high ceilings, not a huge house. It was $326,000. So nothing super crazy, especially when think about that now. But it was really nice. It was a good distance to my job, good distance to my now husband, then boyfriend's job, all of those things. But that was 2017. In January 2020, or we got married in 2019, somewhere in there, I started doing math. And even with 2 six-figure jobs that were saving, say 25%, maybe, which is still really good, we could retire at like 55. No joke, 55. And I said, this is BS. This is unbelievable to me. And I was looking at our payment on our house was $25,000 over the year after tax. So if you think about that, that means more than what I was making in my first job out of school, I had to make just to make that payment. Insanity. So that's when I was like, what was really awesome back when I was house hacking, and we went back to it and bought this bed and breakfast. And, I dragged my husband along with me at the time.
As wives will do.
Exactly. Good spouses do. Exactly.
Well, cool. As we sort of get to the end, is there anything that we missed? Anything that you wanted to add?
I think it's really easy right now to look at real estate investing and look at the interest rates and think now is for sure a bad time to buy. And it could be, but it might not be. What we saw for the last couple of years were huge competition on the buying side over asking deals,
right?
Tons of deals, best and finals constantly. That, to my experience, is not happening out there right now. You may be the only person that makes an offer on a home. You may be able to negotiate some of your closing cost assistance in there. You may be able to buy a house for less than it's listed for, and you can probably refinance later, right? Let's say you're at 7% now. They might go down to 6 or 5 or 4 in a year or two. So you're getting rid of some of the competition. You're always going to have paid that price. Just refinance in a couple of years. If you like the house, if you can afford the payment, I would go for it. Or if it's an investment property, if your numbers work, then I would go for it. I wouldn't be scared away because of that. I wouldn't assume just because it's high interest rates that it's a bad time to buy. And that's something that I think is scaring a lot of people right now. And I would suggest, if you're really interested in real estate, especially if you're interested in investing, keep looking at deals, even on the MLS. You don't have to get an off-market deal. All of my deals have been on on the MLS. I've done very well. Keep looking, keep analyzing, analyze 5 deals a day, and you'll find something that works.
I think that's a good point. And that's one thing that I've always heard and done as well. In other words, don't do what's popular. So now that not everybody, but most people are scared away from investing because of the high interest rates, that's maybe when you should be investing more. Yeah. Because you've got less competition now. You've got less buyers in the market now. You've got less people in the market now. Well, so cool. Thank you. We appreciate you being a guest on the show, Lauren, and we appreciate the being on your show and now the opportunity to return the favor.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. This was fun.
Yeah. So again, you're on Twitter. Adulting is easy. We've got the resources you can download. adultingiseasy.gumroad.com. You can talk to Lauren if you want at realadultingiseasy.com/book-online. I'll put all that on our notes as well as all the social media channels. I do want to talk before we go. I want to talk about our second sponsor. He's been with us way back to episode 1. It's Mark Purvis. He is our editor. He is the one that makes us sound good. He's probably not going to have to do much for Lauren. She already sounds good. But Mark has a website called legacyspotlight.com. And so if you want to preserve some of your stories for future generations, go to legacyspotlight.com, sign up with Mark. He is an Emmy Award-winning videographer. He's got 20-plus years experience in the industry. The other thing, we appreciate all of your listening. We appreciate all of your support. If you want to do a little bit more, we do have our Patreon page. So you can go to Patreon and search for Crushing Debt. And if you want to do more than just listen, we would absolutely appreciate it, but it is not required. We'll continue pumping out content for you. Our social media channels, our Curbelo TikTok, the Curbelo Financial TikTok page. I know Yesner Law has Facebook and YouTube and other social medias as well. But I think that'll do it for this week's episode. What do you think, George?
I think it sounds and was great. And thank you, Lauren, as usual.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So you did the line so well last week. You want to do it again?
Okay, let's try. Let's see. Oh my, so much pressure. So much pressure. But we're here to help, guys, in order to make sure that you have more money at the end of the month than you do more month at the end of the money.
Close enough. No, I think
it's
you got
close
it right.
enough, right?
Yeah. and the number of times that I screwed up that line, you're allowed to mix it up once or twice. So that'll do it for this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast, and we look forward to talking to you on next week's episode.
If you have questions that you think would make a great topic for a future episode, please email Shawn or connect with us on social media. Shawn Yesner and Yesner Law, PL, are Florida licensed attorneys. The information contained in this week's episode is not a substitute for legal advice. Your situation may differ, especially if you are located somewhere other than the state of Florida. If you have questions, please contact our office or contact a local attorney. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast.